Now that we have worked through some basic sewing, we have gone through editing sewing, introduced precision sewing, and gone through some new concepts in advanced sewing, I want to go back and review sewing properties. To do this, I want you to make sure that you open your sewing tension file. That can be found on your Google Drive. And once you have that open, I have hit the 2 key, so I have a view of her facing forward. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and reduce the size of my 3D window because I'm going to be working primarily with my 2D window for the time being. If you are zoomed out to something funky, remember you can hit the closed parentheses and that will bring that and fit that to your window. And to date, if I wanted to select things in my 2D pattern window, we have been using our Transform Pattern tool to do so. So if I go ahead and select everything, okay, you'll see everything lights up yellow as you would expect. It lights up the same way in my 2D window and my 3D window. And if I open up my property panel, again, you'll see properties related to these pattern pieces. So what we've used most frequently to date is particle distance. Earlier, I introduced fabrics. We've done some work there as well. Okay, so these are things that you are accustomed to. I will close my property editor and come back and because I actually want to see my sewing properties, I'm going to use my Edit Sewing tool. Now, I can either select a single sewing relationship, okay, and you'll see the dashed lines appear here. I can also click over on something that has symmetric sewing attached to it. So if I click on one, it's going to select the corresponding one. And I can also do a marquee selection with this tool and grab all of the sewing relationships. Okay, so I'm going to reduce the size of my 3D window. I'm going to go ahead and increase or open my property editor, and you'll see that this looks distinctly different with the selection of these items with a different tool. So the things that we're going to address here are sewing line type, tension, and 3D seam line. Now, to start off with, up here at the top, my sewing line type, you're going to see that it defaults to custom angle. Okay, and the numbers that will be defaulting here is a fold strength of 5 and a fold angle of 180 degrees. Now, 180 degrees is going to look, essentially it's going to look flat, and it's going to look, and that's going to be because all of your seams are pressed open. Okay, this is used most frequently on pattern pieces. Okay, the pattern pieces just being sewn to other pattern pieces. So if I were to zoom in on my garment, okay, and you can see where something has been sewn together here, you can see here and here and here. These all look flat, again, because of that fold angle of 180 degrees. Now, there will be cases where this does not work, okay, or is not appropriate, and you'll see that you have another option of turned. And this option is set as the default within Clo when you sew something to an internal line. Okay, so thinking back on projects that we have done in this class, practice assignments I should say, the internal lines that we have used have been pockets. So again, if you're sewing a pocket to an internal line on a pattern piece, Clo is going to default to this option of turned. Okay. So again, Clo does a great job of making some really smart guesses, but remember, Clo is not human and Clo cannot predict everything that we will need. To illustrate this, I'm just going to come over and zoom on my garment. Okay, I'll pan up, and I just need to come up here and get close to my collar. Okay, and you're going to see that this collar looks a little puffy. All right, it almost looks like this was sewn together just before it was sealed. It was inflated with air. Okay, again, it's just very fluffy, and that's not typically what you see at the neckline of something like a t-shirt or some other knit top. And so what we need to do is we need to change this from what should have been flat and is not able to be rendered with this particular piece using the default setting. And we want to change this to turned. And to do that, again, I need to use my Edit Sewing tool. I'm going to zoom in closer to my collar. And you'll see that there are 2 sewing relationships here. Okay, I'm going to click on the red one. I'm going to hold Shift and click on the purple one to make sure that both of those pieces are selected. And I'll go ahead and change custom angle to turned. And that'll take a beat. And when that's done, you're going to see that the color doesn't actually look any different. And remember, when we make a change on the property editor, for that to become visible, we need to simulate. Okay. Now you'll see once that simulates, that's going to look flat, and that is going to look much more like what we expect, okay, when we think of a color on a t-shirt or other knit item. Okay. I also want to point out while we're here, you can actually see that the shirt is hovering a little bit over our avatar. Remember, we talked about padding, the avatar, if memory serves, I think it was 3 millimeters of padding or just space, and then the garment itself has about 2.5 millimeters. Okay, so again, there's that buffering space, so it helps prevent things from colliding with each other and just having issues with collision in general. Okay. Now I'm going to turn off simulation now that I have made that change. Okay, and again, just to reiterate, when you use your property editor and you make a change, you will want to simulate to see that take effect. And historically, what we have done that most frequently with, especially recently, was particle distance. If I change my particle distance from 20 to something like 5, I can't see it until I simulate. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and hit my close parentheses. Okay, and I will grab my Edit Sewing tool again, select all of my pattern pieces, and open up my property editor. Okay, so again, we've talked about sewing line types. The next thing I want to talk about is tension. And this happens to me from time to time. You'll see tension should default to be turned on, so that's good. But I can't actually see the numbers associated with tension. And to get it, I'm going to turn it off for a moment, and I'll turn it back on. And for whatever reason, it disappears from time to time. But when I do that, I'll see that my strength and my ratio become accessible. Okay. So again, tension defaults to on, and it's going to default to a strength of 0.1, and it's going to default to a ratio of 100. Now, your strength is the tightness of the stitches. Okay, so if you increase the strength, the seams will pull on the garment. Okay. And we can play with fit maps in a little while to try to illustrate that for you. For the most part, you want to just leave the default set to on. Okay, it's pretty rare that you would need to change that. However, the example that I have seen most readily is that if you were working with a really stretchy knit, you might find that having the tension on at all leads to some issues, so you may consider turning it off in that case. Okay. So again, strength is the tightness of the stitches, and then ratio is what happens if the seam is eased in or stretched out when it is sewn. Okay, it's going to default to 100, and that's going to indicate neither. All right, so it was neither eased in nor was it stretched out. I want you to keep in mind that something below 100 will cause the seams to shrink up, and above 100 will cause them to stretch out and bunch. Okay. And to illustrate this most effectively, I'm just going to click off, and I'm just going to grab one sewing relationship, okay? And I will minimize my 2D screen and just zoom in on this top, okay? So the seam that I have selected is this one running down the center of her top. And to just make sure that this is as visible as possible, I'm going to increase the strength. Okay, so I'm going to increase it to something kind of obnoxious.
Here are some movies matching screen.
What I'm going to do, that was my watch talking to me, sorry. Okay, so with my strength turned up, just to make sure that this ratio change is as visible as possible to you, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ratio down. I'll take it down to something like 20, and I'll go ahead and simulate so you can see this. So again, when you're below 100, okay, those seams are going to shrink up, okay? I'll go ahead and change this. I'll take it up rather high. And when you're above 100, they're going to stretch out, and that's going to cause some bunching. Okay? So again, at the end of the day, Chloe does a really good job with setting the defaults for you. I would tell you just to leave the defaults as they were. If you have experience sewing, you have experience with some of these fabrics, you may have a sense already of how you might correct an issue that is arising as you work. I know I have other students who have never sewn before, so again, you can lean on the defaults and ask for help if you need it. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and set my settings back to the default, and you'll see that this flattens back out and looks the way I expect. I'm going to turn simulation off. Okay. And actually, let me go back for just a moment. Okay, I'll go ahead and select that sewing relationship one more time. I'll increase the strength. I'll go ahead and increase my ratio. I'll go ahead and simulate so you can see that. And I'll do that just briefly because I meant to show you these different fit maps. Okay, I'll go ahead and turn on a stress map. Okay, and very obviously you can see where stress naturally occurs in a garment like this. Okay, you can see stress occurring here at that seam line because I have a lot of strength being relayed here. Okay, you've also got it here at the waistband, which is not super surprising. If I go ahead and turn that one off and move over to my strain map, okay, again, you can see strain is happening at the waist, which is not super surprising. And you can see some other issues here and how that measures percentage-wise here, okay? I can also go, I'll turn that one off, and I'll go over to your fit map, okay? And again, as you play with some of these numbers, okay, this should be changing, and of course it's not changing in this case for me. Let me go to a different fit map. I'll turn the strength up, and of course none of these are working now that I am recording, so that is fantastic. Again, you can play with this on your own, give it a minute to work. Okay, something's going a little hinky here, but know that these fit maps are here and you can play with them. Again, there's stress, okay, there's stress, there's strain, and then there are fit maps. Okay, I'm going to turn that one off. And I've been having some issues with some of these settings today, so I will just leave that be. I'm going to come back and reset my strength, and I will reset my ratio to 100. Okay. I will simulate again, okay, and you'll see that that seam smooths back out for me, okay. Now this garment has actually been giving me a little trouble, okay. This has worked previously and it's not working today, but I'm going to go ahead and just illustrate another area of your property editor. Again, using my edit sewing tool, I've selected all of these sewing relationships. And again, you'll see another area you have to work with here is your 3D seam line. Okay. Again, I'll zoom in, I'll pan up, okay, and this seam line, okay, if I deselect, turn off, simulate, and just click off so nothing is there, you can change the appearance of seam lines in most cases, okay. This file is not working especially well for me at this point, but I want to go ahead and just talk about it since I have this up and we are working, and make sure that you at least know where this information exists. So your seam line is rendered with a normal map, and essentially what that does is it creates a shadow, okay, to create the appearance of a seam. It's going to default to an intensity of 10, and it defaults to a thickness of 0.059. Okay. Now, Clo will suggest that you either leave it at the default of 10 or change it to 0 if you really want to reduce the appearance of it or make it essentially look like it's almost not there. Now, what I'm finding with this garment, and I don't know if this is a glitch in the program today, on occasion I've experienced this in the last few months, and Clo actually even today issued a few fixes for some other little glitches that they've been having. But this is set to 10, but I will tell you right now, if I click off, this actually looks like it's set to 0, okay? It's barely visible, and really the only reason you can really see it is because the pattern is running one direction here and it's running one direction here. So you're seeing where these two patterns are touching, okay? And that's creating the appearance of a line here. Normally when this is active, you'll actually see a very visible shadow, and it will make it look like the seam is sunk below and the fabric is risen above just a little bit, okay? Again, you can increase the appearance of that normally, okay, by either increasing the thickness, okay, and really thickness is what you want to focus on most. Consider taking it up to something like 0.1 or 0.15. Again, intensity, they really do tell you to leave it at 10 or take it to 0. Unfortunately, they have had some issues with this particular tool, and when you try to go above 10, there are a lot of issues with shadows and rendering, and it just the program having some problems. Okay, so all that said and done, it's probably not altogether surprising that this is not working for me that great today. But again, if you're working with a fabric that you just feel like should have a much more distinct seam line appearance, again, it's related to your sewing. If you relate it to your sewing, you'll know that it's got to be on the property editor associated with the sewing, and it's down here, that 3D seam line. Okay, again, a normal map is going to be rendering a shadow, and this is going to be affecting the appearance of the shadow. Okay, what I'd like to just remind you to do as you're continuing to work in the program, when you have files open, what I'd really like you to do is to take a beat, particularly we haven't been in this file for all that long, to take a beat, click on things. Again, I can click on all of these pieces. I can open my property editor. And while you already have it open, go ahead and play with it a little bit. Okay, you don't have to save it. It doesn't have to end up being anything great looking. But again, taking a beat just to see what you can change on a garment can be really helpful to your learning. So for instance, again, for your final project, you will be using garments, and you'll be filling them with your choice of fabrics and your patterns and colors. So coming in here and seeing what a garment looks like if it's rendered in something other than nylon spandex in this case, again, will give you some experience, and will be sort of something you can sort of check off a list if you're just looking for other things that you could be doing in this program to grow your learning. Okay, with that, I will go ahead and close this video.